It was a warm afternoon, the kind of afternoon where the sun does not burn but also does not rest, and the air feels a little heavy, like it is holding many small sounds inside it. I had gone to a large shopping plaza that was not far from my home. It was not a special trip. I did not plan to buy anything important. I only wanted to walk a little, look around, and maybe drink a cup of tea. The plaza was clean and bright, with glass doors that opened and closed again and again as people went in and out. Inside there were many shops, and the floor was smooth and shiny, and the lights on the ceiling were strong but soft at the same time. I was wearing simple clothes that day, an old shirt that had lost some of its color after many washes, simple trousers and shoes that were clean but clearly not new. I did not think about my clothes when I left home. They were just clothes. They were comfortable, and that was enough for me. I walked slowly, looking at things, not in a hurry, and I remember feeling calm. There was a small store that sold home items, and in front of it, some boxes were placed near the door. Inside the store, a few workers were arranging shelves and moving things around. I stopped for a moment to look at some cups that were displayed near the entrance. They were simple cups, white with small blue lines, and they reminded me of the cups we used at home when I was a child. I stood there for a few seconds, not even touching anything, just looking. Then I heard a voice behind me, a woman's voice, polite but quick, saying, "Can you tell me where the rice section is?" I turned around slowly, thinking she was talking to someone else, but she was looking directly at me. For a second, I did not understand. Then she added, "And after that, can you help me find the cleaning brushes?" Her tone was not rude. It was normal, like she was asking someone who worked there. I felt a small pause inside me. I looked around and saw no one else close to us. I realized she thought I was a worker in the store. I did not feel angry. I did not feel proud. I only felt a little surprised, like when you open a door and find a room that is not what you expected. I told her, in a quiet voice, "I don't work here. I am just looking." Her face changed a little. Not much, just a small movement, like a shadow passing over water. She said sorry and smiled in a short and quick way, and then walked away. That was all. The moment was very small. It was nothing special. No one else noticed. No one said anything. The store did not stop. People kept walking. The workers kept arranging shelves. The lights stayed the same. The floor stayed shiny. Everything stayed normal. But inside me, something did not move on so easily. I stood there for a few more seconds, looking at the cups, but I was not really seeing them anymore. My mind was somewhere else. I thought about why she had asked me. It was clear. My clothes were simple. I was standing near the boxes. Maybe I looked like someone who was working. Maybe I looked like someone who belonged to that place in that way. I did not think she meant anything bad. She was not trying to hurt me. She just made a quick decision in her mind based on what she saw. And I realized how easy it is to do that. I walked away from the store and sat on a bench near the center of the plaza. There were some plants there, not real ones, but good copies, and a small open space where people sometimes stopped to talk or wait for others. I sat and watched people. Some were well dressed, some were not. Some walked fast, some walked slowly. Some looked tired, some looked happy, some looked lost. And I started to think about how many times I had done the same thing without noticing. How many times I had looked at someone and made a small story about them in my head, without knowing anything real about them. I thought about the times I had seen a man in dirty clothes and thought he must be poor or careless. I thought about the times I had seen someone in a nice suit and thought they must be important or successful. I did not say these things out loud. I did not even always fully think them. They were just small, fast ideas that passed through my mind and then disappeared. But now I saw them more clearly. I saw how weak they were. I saw how little they were based on. Just like the woman had looked at me and thought I worked there. I had looked at many people and thought many things. After some time, I went to a small tea place inside the plaza. It was quiet, with soft music playing, and only a few tables. I ordered a simple cup of tea and sat near the window. I watched people pass by outside the glass. I kept thinking about that small moment in the store. It was strange how something so simple could stay in my mind like this. Nothing big had happened. No one had shouted. No one had been embarrassed in a loud way. No scene had been made, but still, it stayed with me. I remembered my father once telling me that most of the important lessons in life do not come with noise. They come in silence. They come in small moments that you can almost miss if you are not paying attention. At that time, I did not fully understand what he meant. Now, sitting there with my tea, watching people walk by, I felt like I understood a little more. When I left the plaza that day, the sun was already a bit lower and the light had become softer and more golden. The air felt lighter. I walked home slowly. On the way, I passed a small street where some shops were closing their doors. A man was sweeping the floor in front of one of them. His clothes were old and his hands were rough. Before I might have looked at him and thought, he is just a worker. That day, I looked at him and wondered what his life was like. I wondered what he thought about when he went home. I wondered what kind of dreams he had when he was younger and what kind of worries he had now. I did not stop to talk to him. I did not need to. The change was not in my actions. It was in my way of seeing. In the days that followed, I noticed this change more and more. When I went on a bus and saw people sitting around me, I did not quickly put them into small boxes in my mind. I tried at least to stop myself from doing that. When I saw someone dressed very simply, I did not immediately think of their work or their position in life. When I saw someone dressed very well, I did not immediately think of them as better or more important. I started to remember that clothes are just clothes. They are like covers of books that do not always tell the real story inside. Sometimes they tell something, but often they do not. And even when they do, it is only a small part of a much bigger story. One evening, some weeks later, I went to a different store to buy a small gift for a family member. It was a quieter place, not as big as the plaza. While I was there, I saw a young man standing near the door. He was wearing very simple clothes, even simpler than mine had been that day. He was just standing there, looking around, not touching anything. I saw a customer walk up to him and ask him about the price of something. The young man looked confused and said he did not work there. The customer said sorry and walked away. I saw the same small quick smile on the young man's face that I had probably had that day. A smile that says, it's okay, but also carries a small question inside it. I did not go to talk to him. I did not need to. I just felt a quiet understanding. That small moment in the plaza did not change my life in a big loud way. I did not wake up the next day as a completely different person. I still make mistakes. I still sometimes judge too fast. I am still human, but it planted something in me like a small seed. And slowly, without me really noticing, it started to grow. It made me pause a little more before thinking something about someone. It made me a little more careful with my thoughts. It made me remember that every person I see is living a life that is full of things I do not know. Sometimes when I wear my simple clothes and go out, I remember that day and almost smile, not because I was mistaken for a worker, but because of what that mistake showed me. It showed me how quickly we all try to understand the world by using very little information. It showed me how easy it is to be wrong, and it showed me how much more quiet and kind the world can become if we accept that we do not really know the stories of the people around us. Now, when I walk into places, I still just wear what is comfortable. I do not try to look like anything special. And when someone looks at me and makes a small, wrong story in their head, I do not feel hurt. I understand it, because I know I have done the same, and I know I will probably do it again. But I also know that each time I remember that small moment in the store, I become a little better at stopping myself, a little better at leaving space in my mind for the truth, whatever it may be. That day, I did not buy the cups. I did not really need them. But I brought something else home with me. Something I could not put on a shelf or in a cupboard. A quiet reminder that people are always more than they look, and that sometimes the smallest moments are the ones that stay with us the longest and teach us the most, without ever raising their voice. After that day, life did not suddenly become different in a way that could be seen from the outside, but inside me, things were slowly moving, like water that changes its path little by little, without making any noise. Weeks passed, and then months, and the memory of that afternoon in the plaza stayed with me in a quiet way. It did not come to my mind every day, but it returned often, especially in moments when I was about to think something quick and simple about someone I did not know. One morning, I was standing in a long line at a small government office. The room was old, with pale walls and fans that made a tired sound as they turned. The chairs were not comfortable, and people were sitting and standing in small groups, waiting for their turn. There was a man standing near me, wearing very clean and expensive-looking clothes. His shoes were shining, and his hair was perfectly in place. He kept looking at his phone and sometimes looking at his watch, and his face showed clear impatience. Not far from him there was another man, older, with clothes that looked worn and simple. His shoes were dusty, and his hands were dark from work. He was holding some papers in a thin folder and standing very quietly, not moving much, just waiting. For a moment I felt the old habit inside me trying to wake up. The habit that wanted to say, "This man must be important," and "That man must be poor and unimportant." I caught that thought before it could settle. I remembered the plaza. I remembered the cups. I remembered the woman's voice asking me for help, and I stopped myself. I looked at both men again, really looked at them, not as signs or symbols, but as people. Time passed slowly in that office. The fan kept turning. People kept being called one by one. The man in expensive clothes started to speak loudly on his phone, complaining about how long everything was taking and how he had better things to do. The older man stayed quiet. When it was finally his turn, the older man went first. He walked to the counter, spoke politely, and gave his papers. The worker looked at them and said there was a small problem and that he would have to come back another day. The older man nodded, thanked him, and walked away without saying anything else. When the man in expensive clothes went to the counter, something similar happened. He became angry, raised his voice, and started to argue. People looked at him. The worker stayed calm but firm. In the end, the man had to leave without finishing his work, just like the older man. As he walked away, still talking loudly, I thought about how different they were, not in their clothes, but in their way of being. And I thought again about how little clothes really tell us. Another time I was on a bus going to visit a relative. The bus was full, and I had to stand near the door. There was a young woman sitting in one of the front seats. She was dressed very simply, and her bag looked old. She was holding it close to her, and her eyes were looking down. A man got on the bus at the next stop. He was wearing a neat shirt and clean shoes. He looked around and then looked at the young woman. Without asking, he said in a strong voice, "You should stand up and give me your seat." The young woman looked up, surprised. She hesitated and then stood up without saying anything. I felt something uncomfortable inside me. Not just because of what he did, but because I could guess why he did it. He saw her clothes, he saw her quiet way. He decided she was someone who could be pushed. I wanted to say something, but I did not. I am not proud of that. I stayed quiet, but I did not forget it. The whole way I kept thinking about it. I kept thinking about how often this happens in small ways that most people do not even notice. And again, that small moment in the plaza came back to me like a soft but clear voice, reminding me to see more carefully. One afternoon, I went to a small park near my house. It is not a big park, just some trees, a few benches, and a place for children to play. I sat on a bench with a book, but I did not read much. I was watching people. There was a man sitting on another bench, feeding birds with small pieces of bread. His clothes were simple, and his hair was white. Some children were running and laughing. A woman was walking slowly with a small child, holding his hand. Everything was normal, quiet, and peaceful. After some time, a young man came into the park. He was well dressed and talking on his phone. He walked back and forth, speaking loudly, not caring much about the quiet of the place. At one point he sat down on the same bench as the old man who was feeding the birds. He looked at the birds, then at the bread, and then at the old man. He made a small face like he did not like what he saw. He stood up again and walked to another bench. The old man did not seem to notice or care. He just kept breaking the bread into smaller pieces and throwing them gently to the birds. I watched this and felt something heavy and something clear at the same time. The young man probably thought the old man was strange or poor or not worth sitting next to. Maybe he did not even think that much. Maybe it was just a feeling. But feelings like that also come from the same place. From quick ideas. From small, quiet judgments. As time went on, I started to notice not only how others judge, but also how I do. Sometimes it was in very small ways. Like when a new neighbor moved in and I saw him wearing old clothes while carrying his boxes. For a moment, I thought his home might not be very nice. Then I stopped myself. Or when I went to a wedding and saw someone dressed very simply among many people wearing expensive clothes. For a moment, I thought they might feel out of place. Then I remembered that maybe they were exactly where they wanted to be, and their clothes had nothing to do with it. One day, I had to go to a hospital to visit a distant relative. Hospitals always make me feel a little quiet inside. The smell, the white walls, the slow walking of people, the soft and serious voices. I was sitting in the waiting area when a man came and sat near me. He was wearing very simple clothes, and his face looked tired. His hands were shaking a little. After some time, a doctor came and called his name. The man stood up slowly and went with the doctor. Not long after, a woman came and sat in the same place. She was wearing very nice clothes and holding an expensive-looking bag. She looked calm and confident. When her name was called, she stood up and walked in with a straight back and steady steps. I do not know what happened to either of them. I do not know what kind of news they received. But I remember thinking that worry and fear do not care about clothes. Pain does not choose people by how they look. Life does not do that. Only we do. There were also moments when I was on the other side. Moments when people looked at me and made their own quick stories. Once, I went to a small restaurant in very simple clothes, because I had been at home all day and did not think much about what I was wearing. The waiter showed me to a table but did not bring a menu for a long time. He passed by many times, serving others who were better dressed. When he finally came, he looked a little surprised that I was still there. I did not say anything. I just ordered and ate and paid and left. But inside, I understood. I understood how easy it is for people to decide who matters more and who matters less, using nothing but a quick look. Strangely, this understanding did not make me angry. It made me quiet. It made me think. It made me more careful. I started to feel that every person is like a closed room. You can see the door, you can see the walls, you can see maybe a window, but you do not know what is inside unless you are invited in. And most of the time, we are not invited in. Most of the time, we only see the outside, and we decide that is enough. One evening while walking home, it started to rain. Not a heavy rain, just a soft, steady one. People started to walk faster. Some opened umbrellas, some ran to find cover. Near a small shop, I saw a woman standing under a small roof, holding a bag of vegetables. She was dressed very simply, and her shoes were already wet. She looked at the rain with a tired face. A man with a big umbrella walked past her, then stopped, turned back, and held the umbrella over her too. He said something to her, and she smiled and said something back. They stood there together for a few minutes talking. Then the rain became lighter, and they walked in different directions. It was a very small thing, but it stayed with me. I did not know who they were. I did not know anything about their lives. But in that moment, none of that mattered. What they wore did not matter. Where they came from did not matter. Only that small, simple kindness mattered. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I think about how many times in my life I must have passed by people without really seeing them. How many stories I will never know. How many lives touched mine for a second and then disappeared. And I think about how strange it is that one small misunderstanding in a store could open my eyes more than many big speeches or books ever did. There is a small shop near my house where I sometimes buy bread. The man who works there is quiet and always wears the same simple clothes. For a long time, I only knew him as the bread seller. One day I went there and he was not there. Another man was working. I asked where he was. The man said he was sick and in the hospital. A few days later, when he came back, I asked him how he was. He looked surprised, then smiled and said he was better now. We talked for a few minutes. Just simple talk. About the weather, about work, about small things. After that, sometimes we talked a little more. I learned that he has children. I learned that he likes old movies. I learned that he once wanted to be a teacher. Before he was just the bread seller. Now, he was a person with a past and hopes and worries. Of course he always was. I just did not know it. The world did not change because of my small lesson. People still judge each other. I still judge sometimes. But for me something is different. There is now a small space between what I see and what I think. A small pause. In that pause there is room for doubt. Room for kindness. Room for the idea that I might be wrong. And it all started with a woman asking me where the rice section was. And 2 cups I did not buy. And clothes I did not think about that morning. Sometimes I think about how many such moments are happening around us every day, quiet and small, waiting to be noticed. Moments that do not try to teach us anything, but still do if we let them. Moments that do not come with big words or strong feelings, but stay with us longer than we expect. Now, when I walk through the same plaza, I sometimes pass that same store. The cups are different now. The boxes are in different places. The workers have changed. The woman is probably somewhere else, living her life, not remembering me at all. But I remember. And each time I walk a little slower, and I look at people a little more carefully, and I carry that small, quiet lesson with me, like a light thing in my pocket that I do not always touch, but I always know is there. As more time passed, that quiet lesson did not fade. Instead, it became like a soft background sound in my life, something I did not always notice, but something that was always there. It was there when I walked through crowded streets and saw people sitting on the side selling small things. It was there when I stood in line at shops and offices. It was there when I watched people talk to each other, sometimes kindly, sometimes without patience. I began to see small details that I had ignored before. I began to notice how often people are not really looking at each other, but only looking at what they think the other person is. One morning, I went to a small cafe not far from my house. It is not a fancy place, just a few tables, a counter, and the smell of coffee that stays in the air all day. I sat near the window and ordered a simple breakfast. While I was waiting, a man came in. He was wearing old, loose clothes, and his hair was not neat. He stood near the counter and looked at the menu for a long time, as if he was trying to decide if he should order or not. The girl behind the counter looked at him in a tired way. Her smile was not the same as it was for others. He finally ordered only a cup of tea. He took it and sat at a table in the corner. No one paid much attention to him. People talked, laughed, used their phones. After some time, he finished his tea and stood up to leave. When he walked past the counter, he quietly said thank you. The girl looked at him for a second, then nodded. It was nothing special. But I thought about how different that moment might have been if he had been wearing different clothes. How different her smile might have been. Another day I was walking through a market where many small shops sell all kinds of things. It was noisy and full of people. I stopped at a fruit shop to buy some apples. The shop owner was a middle-aged man with a loud voice and quick hands. While he was weighing the fruit, a young boy came and stood near him. The boy's clothes were old and a little dirty. He was holding a few coins in his hand. He asked in a small voice if he could buy one apple. The shop owner looked at him for a moment, then took one small apple and gave it to him. The boy looked surprised and happy. He said thank you and ran away. The shop owner then turned back to me and continued his work as if nothing had happened. I paid and left, but I kept thinking about that apple. About how for the boy it was probably a big thing, and for the shop owner it was probably very small. And I thought about how often we have the chance to be kind in small ways without even noticing it. One evening, I was invited to a small gathering at someone's house. There were people from different places and different walks of life. Some were well dressed, some were not. People talked in small groups. I was standing near a table with drinks when a man came and stood next to me. He was wearing very simple clothes, and his shoes looked old. He smiled and started talking to me about the weather, about the city, about small things. We talked for some time. He was calm and easy to talk to. Later, someone else joined us and started talking to him in a different way, with a little less interest, a little less attention. I could feel it. I could see it in the way they looked at him and the way they answered him. After some time, the man left. Later that evening, I found out that he was actually the owner of a successful business. Not a small one. A very successful one. I was not surprised. Or maybe I was surprised, but not in the way I would have been before. I just thought again, how little we really know about people. There was also a day when I myself was in a hurry and did not act in the way I wished I had. I was late for something important and went into a small shop to quickly buy something. There was only one person working there, and he was slow. He moved carefully, like he was tired or unwell. I felt impatient. I looked at my watch. I sighed. I did not say anything rude, but inside I was not kind. When I left the shop, I felt a little ashamed of myself. I remembered all the things I had been thinking about, all the small lessons, and I still failed in that moment. That made me understand something else. That learning is not a straight road. It is more like a long path with many turns, and sometimes you walk in the wrong direction even when you know where you want to go. One afternoon, I went to visit an old school teacher of mine. He lives in a quiet area in a small house with a small garden. We sat and talked for a long time. At one point, I told him about the day in the plaza and about how it changed the way I see things. He listened quietly. Then he said something very simple. He said, "People are always in a hurry to understand, but they do not take time to know." That sentence stayed with me. It felt very true. We want quick answers. We want quick ideas. We want to put everything and everyone into small, clear boxes. It makes the world feel easier. But it also makes it less real. As the years moved on, I started to collect these small moments in my memory without trying to. Like the time I saw a very well-dressed man shouting at a bus driver, and later saw the same driver quietly help an old woman get off the bus. Or the time I saw a woman in very simple clothes carefully counting coins to buy medicine, and the shopkeeper quietly giving her a little more than she paid for. Or the time I saw a young boy laughing with his friends, and later saw him sitting alone, looking lost. All these moments reminded me that every person carries many sides inside them, and we usually only see one. Sometimes, I think about my own life and how many times people must have looked at me and made their own small stories. Times when I was doing well but looked tired. Times when I was struggling but tried to look fine. Times when I was quiet not because I was empty, but because I was full of thoughts. I wonder how many of those stories were wrong. Probably most of them. And that is okay, it is normal. But it is also a little sad. One winter morning, I was on a train going to another city. The train was not full, and I found a seat near the window. At the next station, an old man got on and sat across from me. He was wearing a long old coat and holding a small bag. He looked around slowly, then looked out of the window. We did not talk for a long time. After some time, the train started moving, and he suddenly spoke. He told me he was going to see his sister after many years. He told me they had not talked because of a small family problem that had grown bigger with time. He said he was nervous and happy at the same time. He talked slowly and carefully, as if choosing each word. I listened. When he finished, he smiled a little and looked out of the window again. We did not talk much after that. When he got off the train, he said goodbye and wished me well. I never saw him again. But sometimes I think about him and hope that his meeting went well. There was another moment in a small bookstore. I was looking at some books when a young girl came and asked the seller about a book. The seller answered in a cold way and pointed to a shelf without even looking at her. The girl went to the shelf, looked for some time, then left without buying anything. I do not know why, but that moment stayed with me. Maybe because I thought about how many times a small kindness or a small coldness can change someone's day. Or maybe because I thought about how easy it is to forget that the person in front of you is not just a customer or a stranger, but a whole person. Slowly, without me making a plan or a promise, I started to try to be a little more patient, a little more open, a little more careful with my thoughts. Not always with my actions, because actions are sometimes harder to change, but at least with my thoughts. When I catch myself making a quick decision about someone, I try to stop and remind myself that I do not know their story. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. But the reminder is there. The world around me did not become kinder or slower. It is still busy. People are still in a hurry. People still judge and are judged. But my own small world inside me became a little quieter, a little wider. I stopped expecting to understand people quickly. I stopped believing that I could see the truth just by looking. And sometimes when I think back to that simple day in the plaza, I almost feel thankful for that small misunderstanding, thankful for the cups I did not buy, thankful for the clothes I wore without thinking, thankful for that short question that was not meant to teach anything, but did. Life is full of big events that we think will change us, but often it is the small, quiet moments that stay with us and slowly move something inside us, like a drop of water that keeps falling in the same place. Not strong, not loud, but patient. And one day, without us noticing when it happened, something is different. Not outside, but inside.